The Wild Strawberry. It was 5 in the morning and I was already late for work. I hit snooze so many times that I felt like some of my students. At that point, I just wanted to stay in bed and call the school for a substitute. I was set on staying home and taking the day for myself until I realized I had freshly picked strawberries waiting for me at school. Strawberries were my favorite. My fellow teacher Grace had a beautiful garden where she grew all sorts of fruits and vegetables. She was always telling me how I should just go to Whole Foods and buy a pack of strawberries for myself, but they just weren't the same. There was just something about Grace's strawberries that made them different. I always told myself that if I could have one thing before I die, it would be a wild strawberry from her garden. Crap! I grabbed hold of the steering wheel. I didn't even notice I was driving because I was so distracted by the thought of those strawberries. If it wasn't for my new Tesla, I would have crashed directly into that post. As I was driving, I got this horrible feeling in my heart, like something was wrong. I felt like I should turn around and go home, but I kept driving, and eventually the feeling went away. I looked at the clock and saw it was only 5:45, and I had some extra time to stop and grab a coffee. I practically ran to the door of the Starbucks to save time, but it was closed. Are you kidding me? Ugh, today is going to be a bad day. As I pulled into the school parking lot, I noticed that Grace's car was not in her normal parking spot. In fact, multiple teacher spots were actually empty. I checked my Google Calendar on my phone to see if somehow today was actually Sunday, and perhaps I had woken up for no reason, but it was certainly Monday. Monday, April 17th, 2019. Today is such a weird day, I said as I locked my car. I walked into the first block of the day, and all my students were showing each other their new AirPods and their new checkered Vans. I slammed the door shut to get their attention, and the room went silent. I like your Vans, Scarlett. My daughter has a pair of her own, I said to one of my students to ease the tension. I began to write the goal for the day on the smartboard when I was obnoxiously interrupted by the loudspeaker. It was the same old thing every single day. Good morning, Mountview High School, blah, blah, blah. Something about the lunch for the day and then some cheesy adjective to go along with that day of the week. We continued along with the rest of class. As a math teacher, I had to find interesting ways to keep my students engaged. Every once in a while, I would create a game for the students to compete to earn extra points on a quiz or a test. It got the students motivated to do good in class. It made me so happy that I was able to make them want to learn. I remember thinking to myself, at least the day is slowly getting better. The students wanted to earn extra points so badly that whenever they knew the answer to the question, they would hit their bell what seemed to be 1,000,000 times. I remember at one point the ringing got so loud that no one could hear a thing. I could faintly hear the loudspeaker come on again. I remember thinking that I was just hearing things until Scarlett, the girl with the checkered Vans, said, "Shh, quiet, the loudspeaker's on." I remember Mrs. Rollo, the office secretary, coming onto the loudspeaker and whispering into the intercom, "Attention, we are in lockdown. We are in lockdown." Right away, all the students began complaining, saying, "Dang it, my team was winning." I remember saying, "Okay, now everyone get to the corner and sit quietly while I close the blinds and lock the door." All the kids were crouched in the corner under desks and chairs, much like every other lockdown drill, and they were all on their phones to pass time. Meanwhile, all I could think of is why Mrs. Rollo would whisper into the loudspeaker. Then I began to wonder why the principal or the school officer hadn't come by yet to check the doors and go through protocol. Immediately, all the kids panicked, and so did I. "Mrs. Moore, what was that?" they all asked with fear in their eyes. I just remember telling them not to panic and to remain silent because I didn't know what else to tell them. I had no clue what was going to happen. "Mrs. Moore, what is happening?" I told all the kids that they needed to be silent as I hid them in the teacher's closet in the math teacher's office. I felt bad. They all looked so scared, and I didn't know what to tell them. All I knew was in that closet was the safest place for them to be. Before I shut the door, Scarlett said to me, "Mrs. Moore, what about you? Where will you hide?" All I replied with was, "Don't worry about me. You're safe." I shut the door and sat down on the floor and felt my heart sink. I remember holding my head in my hands and beginning to cry and cry. I just kept thinking about the kids. The poor kids. You see it all the time, but you never think it will happen to you. My heart sank even further. Whoever it was kept knocking, and I heard a faint whisper. My instincts told me just remain silent and hide, but something deep down told me that whoever it was outside needed help. I crawled over and put my head against the door to listen. Please, please let me in. I'm all alone out here. The voice sounded like a little girl, but not a voice that I recognized. Who is it? What is your name? I said back through the door. My name is Kate. Please, you have to help me. Okay, Kate, listen to me. I'm going to let you in, but first you have to make sure that there's no one else around. There's no one else out here. I'm all alone. Okay, Kate, I'm opening the door. She practically came falling through the door. She was so scared. I didn't ask her any questions. I just took her into my arms to hug her and tell her everything was going to be all right. For a while, Kate and I just sat on the floor holding hands. Neither of us spoke a word to one another, but I felt the bond of trust between us. Things were silent for a while, and Kate began to fall asleep on my lap. She was young, around 5 or 6. I couldn't imagine what she was thinking. She was probably so confused. School is supposed to be a place where kids feel safe and free to learn and be themselves. School is not a place of sadness and death, but today it was. She was probably so confused. Kate, sweetie, you have to wake up. It's time to go. Really? We're leaving? Yes, the police are here. We're safe. We both stood up and made our way to the door. To be cautious, I peeled back the sheet covering the small window on the door to make sure it was clear. Everything looked safe, so I slowly cracked open the door. I remember thinking to myself I had never heard the school so quiet before. There was usually always yelling and kids running up and down the halls, but today it was silent. I used to always wish it was quiet, but in these circumstances, I was rethinking it. Slowly, Kate and I made our way through the huge school halls, when suddenly we heard shots fire once again. I grabbed Kate as fast as I could, and with all my might, I broke through the teacher's lounge door and slammed it behind us. Why did I just slam the door? Gosh darn it, why did I do that? I said in anger. Miss, what is going on? I thought we were leaving, Kate asked. I know, Kate. We're just taking a little break. Kate and I moved to the back corner of the lounge, to the farthest point from the door, as when I broke in, the door handle broke and there was no way to lock it. Once again, we sat in silence. At this point, I think I was more confused than Kate. I heard the police sirens. I thought we were safe. As Kate laid her head back on my lap, I remained on full alert. There was no way I was going to put us in danger again. I stared at the window on the wooden door and never took my eyes off of it. I quickly covered my mouth and covered Kate's. Saw a man walk past the window and felt tears drip from my eyes. He kept pacing back and forth while he was shaking his head. It was like he was in disbelief about what was happening around him. I looked down at his side and saw he was holding a gun. It was him. He did all of this. Before he could notice us, I grabbed Kate and quickly dragged the two of us through the connecting door into the kitchen side of the lounge. Kate was still sleeping so peacefully while I was in complete panic. Suddenly, I heard the door burst open on the other side of the lounge. The man began throwing furniture and glass, and all I heard was crashing. He was throwing a tantrum. Kate woke up from all the crashing and began to cry out of fear. I tried to calm her down and stop the crying, but unfortunately, the man already heard. He slowly walked through the door and began taunting us. I know you two are in here. Just come out and no one will get hurt. My thoughts started going all over the place. I didn't know whether to stay put, go out and fight, or run for our lives. I turned to Kate and asked, Hey Kate, do you play any sports? I play soccer. My daddy is the coach. In soccer, you run pretty fast, don't you? Yes, I'm the fastest on the team. Great. Okay, Kate, you and I are going to have a race, and I'm going to need you to show me how fast you are. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I opened the door and began running with Kate. We kept running and never looked back. We were running, stumbling, and gasping for breath. As we turned the corner into the science hallway, I grabbed Kate's arm and pulled her against the wall with me. Miss, why are we stopping? We're just going to rest for a few seconds. In the midst of my heavy breathing, I heard footsteps creeping near us. "You can't run forever," the man taunted at us. I turned to the left of me and saw a fire alarm. I pulled it and the alarm started going off and the sprinklers were drenching the halls. I grabbed Kate's arm and we began sprinting again, dodging our way through the halls. Kate, do you hear that? They're here," I said with hope in my eyes. I felt relieved that it was almost over. That is until... "You've got to be kidding me!" I had slipped and fallen because the halls were practically flooded from the sprinklers. "Keep running, Kate. You have to beat me," I say, laying on the ground. I was soaking wet and out of hope. Kate came running over and sat next to me. "I'm not leaving without you," Kate says. I sat up and hugged her. I held her in my arms and began to cry. I had never cried like that before, but again, today was a weird day. I looked up and saw the man standing right in front of us. He did not say a word, and neither did I. I just embraced Kate and squeezed her as tight as I could. I clenched Kate even tighter, like she was my own daughter. Suddenly, I heard an unfamiliar voice. "Ma'am, it's okay. You can come to me. You're safe." I slowly lifted up my head from Kate, and there was a police team. I looked down at Kate, and her eyes were closed, but she was safe. We stood up together, holding hands, and made our way towards the police at the main entrance. As we were walking out the doors, Kate looked up to me and said, "I beat you." After all that, I managed to get a laugh out. Kate was so strong and so brave. I looked around me and there were hundreds of people, hundreds of survivors. We were all so brave. I felt a tap on my back, and it was Grace. I bursted out into tears as I hugged her tight. "Sorry I didn't come in today. I was feeling a little sick. But don't worry, I didn't forget these," Grace said. She held out her hands, and in them was a little basket filled with her strawberries. I reached into the basket and put the strawberry in my mouth. Never before had I realized how sweet a strawberry could taste.